You can still buy a new Renault Megane IV at a dealership, but it's been on the market since 2016, so it's time to check it out. Especially since there's no shortage of cars with mileage over 200,000 kilometers. A popular choice for fleets, this model was one of the more affordable compacts, making its prices attractive today. The question remains, is it worth buying?
What engines were installed? Initially, the Megane was equipped with both the naturally aspirated SCE and supercharged TCE petrol engines, as well as diesel engines. The lineup was extensive throughout its production run, but the initial petrol engine lineup was rather disappointing, with the most powerful standard engine displacing 1.2 liters.
Sure, you could buy the 1.6 TCE, 205 horsepower, but that was a sporty car, the GT model, and quite expensive. This engine wasn't introduced in the regular Megane until 2017, though it had 165 horsepower at the time. 2018 brought more, with the arrival of the 1.3 TCE petrol engine, a derivative of the 1.2 TCE, with a wider power range, from 114 to 158 horsepower, replacing the 1.6. It's worth noting that a lot has changed in this area over the years. Typically, the engine lineup, even just in terms of power output, has changed annually, or at least every 2 years. Currently, 2 engines are available, a 1.3-liter petrol with 140 horsepower and a 1.5-liter diesel with 115 horsepower. Both are paired with an automatic transmission.
The diesel lineup was less complex. Throughout its production run, the 1.5 DCI was the base engine, with the more powerful 1.6 DCI briefly replaced by its successor, the 1.7 DCI. The latter was available in a less powerful 130 horsepower version and a more powerful 163 horsepower version with twin turbochargers for the GT. In 2018, sales of the Megane 1.6 DCI were discontinued, replacing both engines with the 150 horsepower 1.7 DCI. The 1.5 DCI, however, remains.
The engines were paired with manual and EDC, dual-clutch automatic transmissions. Only the naturally aspirated Megane 1.6 SCE had a 5-speed manual gearbox, the others a 6-speed. Automatics were 7-speed for regular models and 6-speed for selected diesels and the RS model. The automatics were paired with the more powerful engine variants, including the 1.2 TCE 132 horsepower, 1.3 TCE 140, 158, 159, and 160 horsepower, 1.6 TCE, and 1.8 TCE. The diesels included the 1.5 DCI 110 and 115 horsepower, 1.6 DCI, and 1.7 DCI. The hybrid also had an automatic transmission, but it was a completely different design, the so-called multi-mode, with 2 gears for the electric motor and 4 for the combustion engine. All Megane engine versions were front-wheel drive. Interestingly, the 4-control system, previously used in the Laguna, features 4-wheel steering. This feature was only available in the GT, petrol and diesel, and RS variants.
Which engine to choose? In fact, it depends more on the model year you're interested in, because as I mentioned above, a lot has changed. For example, the naturally aspirated 1.6 SCE, 1.2 TCE, and 1.6 TCE engines were only offered until 2018. Generally, the 2016 to 2018 model year offered the widest range of engines. The 1.3 TCE was offered from 2018 onwards. The 1.6 DCI diesel engine was offered from 2016 to 2018, and the 1.7 DCI from 2019-2020. Among petrol engines, the 1.6 SCE is a sure bet. This relatively simple unit with a timing chain is virtually maintenance-free. Users readily add LPG to it, although not necessarily in the Megane. This isn't so much due to any difficulties as to the car's status. The same engine in the Dacia Duster was often equipped with LPG. The only requirement is to check the valve clearances.
The 1.6's problem lies in its dynamics and 5-speed gearbox. The result is a car from a bygone era in terms of powertrain. Fortunately, fuel consumption isn't excessively high. Average fuel consumption is reportedly 7.2 liters per 100 kilometers. This is comparable to the smaller, supercharged 1.2 TCE.
The second engine on the list of recommended options is the powerful 1.6 TCE. It's a fairly refined engine. It doesn't have the same timing chain issues as the smaller 1.2 TCE, although it does have some stretching issues. Due to this and carbon buildup, frequent oil changes are recommended. The direct injection system performs well, though it's worth remembering that these are relatively new engines. Fuel consumption is a plus, and it's not necessarily higher than the naturally aspirated, but significantly less powerful 1.6 SC, around 8 liters 100 kilometers. Unfortunately, it's a downside when paired with the EDC automatic transmission, which detracts from its already excellent performance. From the period before 2018, there's also the aforementioned 1.2 TCE petrol engine, which isn't a bad engine, but it's not a good one either. It has timing chain problems, which should be addressed early, as there have been reports of filing and fragments getting into the oil. The first problems are noticeable even after around 60,000 to 80,000 kilometers, so buying a car with low mileage won't always prevent this issue. As if that weren't enough, some models consume excessive oil, which causes a number of negative effects beyond just lubricant loss. Improper combustion, carbon buildup, exhaust system damage, and so on. It's also worth remembering that the engine used in the Megane EV has direct petrol injection, unlike the theoretically identical 1.2 TCE used in older models. Can I recommend this engine? A conditional yes if you can find a good one. The 1.3 TCE is a very modern engine, recently installed under the hood of cars, and doesn't deserve a negative review due to its age, but caution is warranted. It not only features all the features of its predecessor, but also includes a gasoline particulate filter, GPF, and a very restrictive exhaust gas aftertreatment system. I'll write more about it later. Among the initial issues noted were rough engine operation and jerking during acceleration, as well as the onboard computer suggestion to check the injection system. Fuel consumption is significantly lower, according to reports even below 7 liters per 100 kilometers, and dynamics are very good. Unfortunately, it's already known that a significant portion of the fuel ends up in the engine oil. Therefore, it should be changed at least every 10,000 kilometers, and also whenever the level rises significantly above the recommended level. If you're not concerned about servicing, choosing this engine may be a good choice. So, which petrol engine should you choose? Unfortunately, it's difficult. After 2018, you're left with no choice anyway. The 1.3 TCE is the only option. Before the facelift, if you're looking for performance, the 1.6 TCE is worth considering. Otherwise, consider the simple and proven 1.6 SCE. Only then will you have to accept a rather limited level of equipment. There shouldn't be such a dilemma when buying a Megane with a diesel engine. The best option is undoubtedly the proven and refined 1.5 DCI. The 90 horsepower version, for the lazy, can consume less than 5 liters 100 kilometers. There's also a more powerful 130 horsepower version that offers good performance. There are variants in between, and each is good. In second place, I'd go with the more modern one, 1.7 DCI, which is a derivative of the 1.6 DCI. It burns less fuel, drives more pleasantly, and in my opinion, in terms of characteristics, it's the best diesel in its size class. It's a shame it's no longer used in any Nissan-Renault Group model. Unfortunately, workshop experience is currently limited. The more proven design is the 1.6 DCI, which was initially hailed as exceptionally successful, but now it's known that it has cracked heads, a faulty EGR valve, and timing chain problems. Therefore, we can expect the revised 1.7 DCI to prove better, although for now this is just guesswork. Therefore, the only proven and effective diesel in the range is the 1.5 DCI. And I believe that, across the entire engine range, it's the best engine to have under the hood of the Megane. Is it worth buying a plug-in hybrid? The Megane is a separate topic, as it's a rare car, but it's possible to stumble upon one. Renault's hybrid is based on a 1.6 SCE Atkinson cycle engine and an electric motor, coupled to a strange gearbox, or rather a gearbox assembly. It's not about its name or design, but rather its operating principle.
it's impossible to describe. Gears are changed without the driver's knowledge, often at moments or in quite surprising ways. It's not even entirely understandable. It takes some getting used to. Does it interfere with driving? Not necessarily, and the car's dynamics are quite good. The power output of around 160 horsepower isn't the same as that of a petrol or diesel engine of comparable power. It's closer to a variant generating around 130 to 140 horsepower. Fuel consumption? Not bad, but not outstanding either. In the combined test, it was 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers. On the highway, you can get down to 5 liters per 100 kilometers, and on the highway, it gets closer to 9 liters per 100 kilometers. The range on a charged traction battery is about 40 kilometers. Is it worth buying a hybrid? If you're willing to accept a smaller trunk and plan on charging it, then yes. Not that it's worth it, but a nice example is worth considering. However, you definitely shouldn't focus on finding such a car. For a similar price, you can buy another hybrid, for example a Korean one, which drives better and uses less fuel. And it doesn't have a battery to charge. Better yet, read the text below, but keep in mind that this is from the perspective of someone buying a new car. Typical faults. As befits a French car, the Renault Megane's primary problem is its electrical system. Owners complain about virtually every electrically connected area. The most common complaints are freezing or malfunctioning multimedia systems, including the radio and Bluetooth. Authorized dealers have replaced the displays. It's not uncommon for entire lighting harnesses to need replacing, especially the rear lights. Engine malfunction warnings appear in the dashboard, which aren't always accurate. The keyless entry system doesn't always work. However, the biggest, almost standard car fault is the exhaust system. The message "check exhaust system" or "check injection system" drives many drivers of this brand of car crazy. A visit to an authorized service center ends with a software update, error clearing, or exhaust system replacement. Not the entire system, but a large part, which can cost several thousand, sometimes even tens of thousands of euros, depending on the model. And interestingly, this applies to both older and newer engines, both petrol and diesel. Additionally, diesel engines can experience problems with the wastegate valve located in the exhaust system. Unfortunately, the exhaust system in the Megane IV diesel engine is very complex, which carries potential costs. It's best to take this to an authorized repair shop, where, in addition to replacing the part, a mechanic can also attempt to diagnose the problem. Another rather sensitive area of the Megane IV is the EDC gearbox, or dual-clutch automatic. While there are no serious mechanical issues yet, the electrical system is proving problematic. Often, jerking and shifting problems are resolved with a software update. Megane owners also report metallic knocking sounds when starting or shifting gears in manual transmissions. Suspension and interior components also occasionally experience knocking sounds. Operating costs. Unlike Japanese cars or some German models, with French cars, we buy them cheaper and use them more expensively. The costs of any repairs offset the lower price of the car, which is why it's cheaper. This has been the case for years and applies to many, though not all, French cars. So, it's important to remember that if you buy a Renault Megane and not a VW Golf, Toyota Corolla, or Mazda 3, the money you don't spend on these cars will sooner or later have to be spent at the dealership. Unfortunately, the Megane isn't immune to childhood illnesses, and authorized service centers are not very good at dealing with them. Worse still, little has changed over the years. In practical terms, engines generally shouldn't be expensive to maintain, as all petrol and diesel engines have timing chains, don't require particularly frequent servicing, and replacement parts are readily available. Incidentally, many of these original equipment parts are also reasonably priced. The exception is the timing belt drive in the top-of-the-line engine of this model, the 1.5 DCI diesel. The cost of the part is around 600 euros plus replacement. It's recommended to replace it every 100,000 kilometers. The total cost can be around 1,000 euros. It's worse when you need to replace the timing chain in a 1.2 TCE, which unfortunately happens quite often. In that case, you'll pay around Euro 1,800 to 2,000 for parts alone, plus around 1,000 euros for labor. That's quite a significant expense, so I strongly advise against this engine for anyone looking to buy a car with their last ditch.
Interestingly, the timing belt for the 1.6 DCI diesel costs Euro 700 to 800.
Other expensive parts? Of course, the injection system comes into play here, and that applies to every engine. French engines, however, don't often struggle with this problem. The 1.3 TCE engine, on the other hand, has a rather complicated turbocharging system, and if it needs replacing, you have to expect an expense of around 4,000 euros. Every engine in the Megane IV has a dual-mass flywheel. The 1.2 TCE engine again fares poorly here, as even the lowest powered 100 horsepower version has a dual-mass flywheel, and it's the most expensive. It costs over 2,500 euros compared to 1,000 euros less for dual-mass flywheels in diesel engines or even the 1.6 TCE.
Fortunately, the car isn't overly complex, and mechanical parts from other parts are readily available at reasonable prices. The suspension is a simple design with McPherson struts at the front and a torsion beam at the rear. All front control arm components are replaceable. Even the 4-control system presents no major problems.
In such cars, the rear suspension has a different multi-link design. The power steering is electric but reliable.
A huge advantage of the Megane IV is its lack of corrosion. The bodywork, of course, is the problem, as the electrical wiring harnesses are in varying states of disrepair. However, it's important to remember that this is a relatively new car.